Karen stepped onto the neatly manicured lawn. Her eyes narrowed in a scowl as she spotted the unfamiliar car parked in front of her neighbor's house. Unacceptable, she muttered under her breath, marching up to the driver's side window. "Excuse me, sir, this is a private community," she declared, rapping sharply on the glass. "You'll need to move your vehicle immediately." The car door flew open, and a young man stepped out, his face a mask of confusion. "I'm just visiting my friend," he protested, holding up his hands. Karen's nostrils flared. "Well, your friend is in violation of the HOA parking regulations. This is unacceptable behavior, and I won't stand for it." She whirled around, already reaching for her phone to call the HOA enforcement officers. The young man's eyes widened in alarm. "Wait, please. I didn't know." But Karen was having none of it. "Rules are rules, young man," she snapped, her fingers punching the numbers on her phone. "If you refuse to move your vehicle, I'll have no choice but to call the authorities." Within minutes, the unmistakable sound of a siren pierced the air, and two uniformed officers strode onto the scene. Karen straightened her shoulders, a triumphant gleam in her eye. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she declared, gesturing towards the car. "This young man is in violation of our HOA parking regulations, and he refuses to move his vehicle." The officers exchanged a glance, then turned to the bewildered young man. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from the vehicle and place your hands behind your back," one of them said sternly. The young man's jaw dropped. "What? But I haven't done anything wrong," he protested, his voice rising in panic. Karen shot him a withering glare. "You're interfering with the proper functioning of our community," she declared. "The officers will handle this from here." As the officers moved to apprehend the young man, a new voice rang out from across the street. "What the hell is going on here?" Everyone turned to see a tall, muscular man striding towards them, his eyes blazing with fury. Karen felt a chill run down her spine as she recognized him. It was her neighbor, Jack, the young man's father. "Jack, I'm so glad you're here," she said, forcing a smile. "This young man is in violation of our HOA parking regulations, and I had to call the authorities too." "That's my son you're harassing, you shriveled old hag," Jack roared, his fists clenched at his sides. "Get your goddamn HOA thugs off my property, or I swear to God, I'll—" Karen took a step back, her eyes widening in alarm. "I was just trying to enforce the rules," she stammered, suddenly feeling very small. Jack stepped forward, his towering presence looming over her. "I don't give a damn about your rules," he growled. "You're not the law around here, and you sure as hell aren't going to treat my family like criminals." He turned to the officers, his voice low and menacing. "Get the hell off my property, or I'll make you regret it." The officers exchanged another glance, then quickly retreated, muttering apologies under their breath. Karen stood there, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger, as Jack ushered his son back into the house, his arm protectively around the young man's shoulders. Karen fumed as she watched Jack and his son disappear into their home. How dare they defy her authority like that? She was the head of the HOA, damn it, and her word was law in this community. Storming back to her own house, Karen slammed the door behind her and began pacing the living room, her mind racing. She had to do something to assert her dominance and show that she was not to be trifled with. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Striding over to her desk, she pulled out a stack of official-looking forms and began filling them out, a malicious grin spreading across her face. The next day, Karen was back on the street, her expression smug as she approached Jack's house. This time, she wasn't alone. Two hulking security guards accompanied her, their faces set in stern expressions. "Jack, I'm afraid I have some bad news for you," Karen announced, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "It seems there have been a number of complaints about the condition of your property. We're going to have to issue you a citation and impose a fine." Jack's brow furrowed in confusion. "What the hell are you talking about?" he demanded. "My property is in perfect condition. This is just another one of your petty power plays, isn't it?" Karen's smile widened. "I'm afraid it's quite serious, Jack," she said, handing him the stack of papers. You have 30 days to bring your property up to code, or we'll be forced to take more drastic measures. Jack's eyes scanned the documents, his face growing increasingly red with anger. This is complete bullshit, he shouted. You're making up these violations just to harass me and my family. Now, Jack, Karen said, raising a hand in a placating gesture. Let's not get hasty. If you cooperate, we can resolve this matter amicably. But if you continue to defy the HOA, she gestured to the security guards, who took a step forward. Jack's jaw clenched, and for a moment Karen thought he might lunge at her. But then he seemed to make a conscious effort to calm himself. Taking a deep breath. Fine, he growled. I'll take care of it. But this isn't over, Karen. You're going to regret the day you decide to mess with my family. Karen's grin widened as she watched Jack retreat back into his house, his shoulders tense with fury. She had won this round, and she couldn't wait to see what other tricks she had up her sleeve. As the security guards followed her back to her own home, Karen felt a sense of power and satisfaction. She was the queen of this community, and no one was going to challenge her authority, not if they knew what was good for them. Over the next few weeks, Jack worked tirelessly to address the violations that Karen had imposed on his property. He mowed the lawn, trimmed the hedges, and even repainted the exterior of his home, all the while seething with resentment towards the HOA president. Karen, however, seemed to take great pleasure in his efforts, frequently stopping by to inspect the progress and find new things that needed to be corrected. Each time, she would issue a new citation, accompanied by a hefty fine, much to Jack's growing frustration. One day, as Jack was working on his landscaping, he noticed a small group of his neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, whispering and casting furtive glances in his direction. Irritated, he approached them, ready to demand an explanation. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice gruff. The neighbors exchanged uncomfortable looks before one of them, a middle-aged woman named Susan, spoke up. "Well, Jack, it's just that. We've been hearing some concerning rumors about you and your family," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack's brow furrowed. "Rumors? What kind of rumors?" Susan hesitated, glancing around nervously. "Well, the kind of rumors that might make some of us feel a little unsafe in the community. About your son and the kind of people he might be associating with." Jack's eyes narrowed, and he took a step forward. His fists clenched. "What the hell are you talking about?" he growled. Now, Jack, let's not get hasty," a familiar voice interjected. Karen sauntered up to the group, her expression one of feigned concern. "I'm sure Susan and the others are just concerned for the well-being of our community. After all, we've all heard the stories about that kind of behavior." Jack's gaze snapped to Karen, his eyes blazing with fury. "What stories?" he demanded. "What the hell have you been telling these people?" Karen raised her hands in a placating gesture. "Now, Jack, I've simply been passing along some of the concerns that have been brought to my attention. You know how rumors can spread, especially in a close-knit community like ours." Jack took a deep breath, trying to keep his temper in check. "Well, let me be very clear," he said, his voice low and menacing. "My son is a good kid, and he's not involved in any kind of behavior that should concern anyone. If I hear one more word of these so-called rumors, I'll make sure everyone in this damn community knows exactly who started them." With that, he turned and stormed back to his house, leaving the cluster of neighbors and Karen in stunned silence. As he slammed the door behind him, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. Whatever Karen was up to, it was only just beginning. Jack's confrontation with the neighbors and Karen had left him feeling shaken and on edge. He couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA president was up to something, and he knew he needed to be vigilant. That evening, as he sat at the kitchen table with his son, Jack broached the subject cautiously. "Son, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." The young man looked up, his brow furrowed in concern. "What is it, Dad?" Jack took a deep breath. "I've been hearing some rumors about you, about the kind of people you might be associating with." He paused, searching his son's face. "Is there anything I should know?" The young man's eyes widened, and he shook his head vehemently. No, Dad, I swear. I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm not involved with anyone shady or anything like that. Those rumors are just a load of crap. Jack studied his son's face, searching for any sign of deception. After a moment, he nodded, his shoulders relaxing slightly. Okay, and I believe you, but I want you to be careful. You hear? That woman, Karen, is up to something, and I don't want you to get caught in the crossfire. The young man nodded, his expression sullen. Don't worry, Dad. I'll keep my head down and stay out of trouble. I promise. Jack reached across the table and squeezed his son's hand, relieved to have his reassurance. But even as they resumed their meal, a nagging sense of unease lingered in the back of his mind. The next day, as Jack was working in the yard, he heard the sound of a car pulling up to the curb. Turning, he saw Karen and two uniformed officers getting out of the vehicle. What's going on here? Jack demanded, his heart beginning to race. Karen stepped forward, her expression grave. I'm afraid we've received some disturbing reports about your son's involvement in illegal activities, she said, her voice dripping with false concern. The officers here have a warrant to search your home and question him. Jack's jaw clenched, and he felt a surge of rage coursing through him. This is bullshit, he roared. You're making this up, just like you did with those damn citations. Karen raised a hand, her expression placating. Now, Jack, let's not make this any more difficult than it has to be. If your son has nothing to hide, then he has nothing to worry about, right? The officers stepped forward, their hands resting on their holsters. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside and allow us to conduct our investigation, one of them said, his voice firm. Jack's eyes narrowed, and for a moment he considered rushing the officers and Karen. But then he caught a glimpse of his son, peering anxiously out the window, and he knew he couldn't risk putting him in harm's way. Reluctantly, he stepped aside, his fists clenched at his sides. This isn't over, Karen, he growled. I swear to God, I'm going to make you pay for this. As the officers entered the house, Jack felt a growing sense of dread and betrayal. He had always trusted his neighbors, but now he realized that Karen had managed to turn them against him and his family, and he knew that he needed to find a way to fight back before it was too late. As the officers entered Jack's home, an eerie silence settled over the neighborhood. Neighbors had gathered on their porches, casting furtive glances towards the commotion, their expressions a mix of curiosity and unease. Jack stood on the sidewalk, his jaw clenched tightly as he watched the officers methodically search every room, his son's frightened face visible through the window. The whole situation felt like a nightmare, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was behind it all. After what felt like an eternity, the officers emerged from the house, their faces unreadable. Jack approached them, his heart pounding in his chest. Well, he demanded, his voice tense. Did you find anything? One of the officers shook his head. No, sir, we didn't find any evidence of illegal activities. Your son appears to be clean. Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of anger. Then what the hell is this all about? He growled, his gaze shifting to Karen, who stood nearby, a smug expression on her face. Well, Jack, it seems there may have been some misunderstandings, Karen said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. But you have to understand, we take the safety and well-being of our community very seriously. We can't just ignore concerning reports, even if they turn out to be unfounded. Jack felt his temper flare, and he took a step towards her, his eyes narrowed. Concerning reports, my ass, he spat. You've been spreading lies and rumors about my family, and now you've got the cops harassing us. I swear to God, Karen, if you don't stop this crap right now, I'm going to. Careful, Jack, Karen interrupted, raising a hand in a placating gesture. Let's not say anything we might regret. After all, we're all just trying to keep our community safe, aren't we? Jack clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. He wanted nothing more than to wipe the smug look off Karen's face, but he knew that would only make the situation worse. Instead, he turned to the officers, his expression pleading. Look, officers, you can see that this is all just a big misunderstanding, he said, his voice strained. Can we please just put an end to this nonsense and go our separate ways? The officers exchanged a glance, then nodded. Very well, sir, one of them said. We'll be on our way. But if we receive any more reports of suspicious activity, we'll have to follow up on them. As the officers got back into their car and drove away, Jack turned to Karen, his eyes burning with fury. This isn't over, Karen, he growled. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I'm going to find out, and I'm going to make you pay for it. Karen simply smiled, her eyes sparkling with a dangerous glint. We'll see about that, Jack, she said before turning and walking back to her own home, leaving Jack to stew in his anger and frustration. As the days passed, Jack's anger towards Karen only continued to grow. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was plotting something, and he knew he needed to find a way to put a stop to her scamming before it spiraled even further out of control. One night, as he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, an idea started to take shape in his mind. It was a risky, desperate move, but at this point, he felt like he had no other choice. The next morning, Jack rose early and made his way to the local police station. He knew he was taking a huge risk, but he was willing to do whatever it took to protect his family. I need to report a crime, he said to the officer behind the counter, his voice low and urgent. The officer raised an eyebrow, gesturing for him to continue. It's my neighbor, Karen, Jack began, his words tumbling out in a rush. She's been harassing my family, spreading lies and rumors, and even getting the cops to search my house on false pretenses. I think she's trying to frame my son for something he didn't do. The officer listened intently, his expression unreadable. Do you have any evidence to support these claims? He asked. Jack shook his head, his frustration evident. No, it's all been her word against mine. But I know she's up to something, and I'm afraid of what she might do next. The officer contemplated Jack's words for a moment, then leaned forward, his brow furrowed. I understand your concerns, sir, but without any concrete evidence, there's not much we can do. Harassment and false accusations can be difficult to prove, especially when it's one person's word against another's. Jack felt his heart sink. He had been so sure that this would be the answer. But now it was clear that the police weren't going to be much help. What am I supposed to do then? He asked, his voice tinged with desperation. I can't just sit back and let her destroy my family. The officer sighed, his expression sympathetic. I wish I could give you a better answer, sir, but the truth is, you may need to take matters into your own hands. Just be careful. You don't want to do anything that could land you in legal trouble. Jack nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. As he left the police station, a determined glint appeared in his eyes. If the authorities couldn't help him, then he would have to find another way to put a stop to Karen's scheming. He knew it was a risky and possibly illegal move, but at this point, he felt like he had no other choice. He was going to have to fight fire with fire, and he was willing to do whatever it took to protect his family. Over the next few days, Jack began carefully planning his next move. He knew he was taking a huge risk, but the thought of Karen continuing to torment his family was simply too much to bear. One afternoon, as Karen was tending to her meticulously manicured garden, Jack approached her, a friendly smile plastered on his face. Hey, Karen, I wanted to apologize for my behavior the other day, he said, his voice calm and conciliatory. I was out of line, and I hope we can put all of this behind us. Karen eyed him suspiciously, but the hint of a smile played at the corners of her mouth. Well, Jack, I'm glad to hear you say that. I never wanted any ill will between us. You know, I'm just trying to do what's best for the community. Jack nodded, his expression earnest. I understand, and I respect that. In fact, I was wondering if there was anything I could do to help out with the HOA. Karen's eyes widened in surprise, and she seemed to ponder the offer for a moment. Well, that's very generous of you, Jack. I suppose there are a few things we could use some extra hands on. Over the next few weeks, Jack worked tirelessly, throwing himself into various HOA projects and volunteering for any task that Karen assigned him. He even went so far as to organize a neighborhood barbecue, inviting all of the residents to come and mingle. As the event unfolded, Jack kept a close eye on Karen, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then, it happened. As Karen was chatting with a group of neighbors, Jack discreetly slipped away and made his way to her home. Carefully picking the lock, he let himself in and began snooping around, searching for any evidence that could incriminate the HOA president. It didn't take long for him to find what he was looking for, a stack of documents detailing a scheme to embezzle funds from the HOA's coffers. Jack's heart raced as he hastily snapped a few photos with his phone, his mind racing with the implications. Just as he was about to leave, he heard the sound of the front door opening. Panicking, he quickly ducked into a closet, holding his breath as Karen's footsteps drew nearer. "I know you're in here, Jack," Karen's voice called out, her tone laced with malice. Come out, wherever you are." Jack held his ground, his heart pounding in his chest. After what felt like an eternity, he heard the sound of Karen's retreating footsteps, followed by the slamming of the front door. Carefully, he emerged from the closet, his mind racing. He knew he had to act fast. This was his chance to finally put an end to Karen's reign of terror. With the incriminating evidence in hand, Jack knew he needed to move quickly. He rushed back to the neighborhood barbecue, his expression grim. "Everyone, can I have your attention, please?" he called out, his voice carrying over the din of the crowd. The guests fell silent, turning to face him with a mix of curiosity and unease. "I have something important to share with all of you," Jack continued, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. "I've uncovered evidence that our HOA president, Karen, has been embezzling funds from our community's coffers." A collective gasp rippled through the gathered neighbors, and everyone turned to stare at Karen, who had gone pale. "That's ridiculous," she sputtered, her eyes darting around frantically. "Jack is making this up, trying to cause trouble." But Jack wasn't about to back down. "I have the proof right here," he said, holding up his phone. "I found documents in your home that show you've been diverting money for your own personal use." Karen's face contorted with rage, and she took a step towards Jack, her hands clenched into fists. "You broke into my house," she shrieked. "That's illegal, you bastard." "I had no choice," Jack retorted, his expression unyielding. "You've been terrorizing my family for months, and I knew I had to put a stop to it." The neighbors began murmuring amongst themselves, some of them casting suspicious glances in Karen's direction. It was clear that they were torn, unsure of whom to believe. "Well, what are you all waiting for?" Karen cried, her voice shrill. "Call the police. Have this man arrested." But as she spoke, the sound of sirens pierced the air, and two police officers emerged from a nearby car, their faces set in stern expressions. "Karen Wilkins," one of the officers said, stepping forward, "you're under arrest for embezzlement and abuse of power as the HOA president." Karen's eyes widened in horror, and she began to back away, her hands raised in a futile attempt to ward off the officers. "No, this can't be happening," she wailed. As the officers cuffed her and led her away, the gathered neighbors erupted into a chorus of cheers and applause. Jack stood there, a satisfied smile on his face, as he watched the woman who had terrorized his family finally get her comeuppance. In the end, the truth had prevailed, and Jack's family was safe. But as he looked around at the stunned and bewildered faces of his neighbors, he couldn't help but wonder what other secrets might be lurking beneath the surface of their seemingly idyllic community.